Hello, dear perceptive souls. This is Bevin Niemann. I am a life purpose coach for Empaths, Lightworkers, and Mystics. I also am the co-founder of 1millionempaths.com, which is a private global online community to be nurtured and connected with others like us who have huge hearts and are deep thinkers and care so much about the future of our world. So today is a collective energy reading, and what wanted to flow through here was the pulling of 12 cards. They will symbolically be representative of the signs of the zodiac, although I won't specify what those are. And although this reading takes place on a certain day and time, these are archetypal energies. So when you come across this, if it resonates with you, then it's meant for you. And let's get started. I'm going to pull them in groups of 2 and just really begin to sense in to what seemed to be a really enormous shift in energy over the last day. We just passed through the lunar eclipse and are moving into a new cycle. It's a lot of emotions that have been coming up recently. We're going to work with the mystical shaman oracle just to ask what wants to emerge, what messages, thank you, Holy Ones, what messages want to come forward about everything that we've been going through and where we are going as a collective world, as a global society. What's happening right now? So the first card that came out was the Ghost Dance. And I really see this as indicative of a lot of the tear gas and the smoke from the rioting fires and everything that's been coming up over the past few weeks. There's this need to tap back in and honor those who have come before in this fight against systemic racism and prejudice. There is a tuning in and a collective not only of human beings going out into the streets, but also the spirits of all of those who marched before, all of those who died because of that oppression. And the Ghost Dance, asks us to really honor those memories, to never forget those memories, to shift the cycle that we have an opportunity now, we have momentum now, which unfortunately happened because of the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others. To not erase the past. We're not meant to erase the past. We're meant to honor and venerate those who came before, and to never forget, so that we don't continue to slide into that power over mentality, that owning of other human beings, because that's still happening in so many places in our world. And this asks us to tap into our ancestors regardless of our skin color, and to really face where we've had really horrific history together. There have been beautiful things that have happened throughout history, but really horrific history, particularly to people of color and Indigenous people. And this Ghost Dance is, as all of those loved ones, those ancestor spirits who have passed on for thousands of generations are coming closer. The veil is just barely there. As we tap into this energy, which is the child, and the 7 invites us into a deeper spiritual exploration. And And to me, this indicates, and I shared this with my online community today, this indicates coming into beginner's mind. You see, there's all of these different cycles of the moon energy. And I remember being a small child, a very empathic, sensitive child, and becoming aware that there were, that people killed each other, and that there were wars, and there was, people who were starving. And I remember looking like this. I remember being horrified by that. I remember feeling like I was an alien from another planet, and I didn't belong here. And why would we treat each other in this way? And so it invites us to go back into that moment before perhaps any of us were influenced by culture, societal messages, the family belief systems that we grew up in, whatever that may be. And come back into this innocence and ask those questions. Children are always questioning, right? They're always like, well, why is it like this? And why is it like that? And adults are like, well, that's just how it always has been. But a child says, well, that's not right, and a child speaks their truth. They don't hold back. They don't understand like the niceties that we've put on things in order to not look at what's difficult. Like, they look right at it. Children know how to do this shadow work very well, this like emotional, deep cycles of this shadow work. They understand, and yet it's a bit traumatizing for everyone as we come into this space. So now I'm going to choose the Sacred Rebels deck and just ask for 2 additional messages about the current energy, what we're transforming into, what's next for our global society, what's next. So the first card that came out was, and I'm sorry, this is a little shiny, follow your own rhythm, right? Follow your own rhythm. And to me, this really speaks of it's time, regardless of what societal and systemic structures have told us is acceptable, is not acceptable, what we should say out loud, that we shouldn't complain about things. Like, this is a time for us to really embody this sacred rebel. And doing this work, getting on and speaking openly, whether you are a voice of a Black person, a voice of a person of color, a voice of an Indigenous person, or you are white and you are working to be an ally, and you're learning and you're listening, and you're finding a way to use your platform in order to spread more awareness and reach and touch people with this message. It is time to follow our own rhythm. See, we can't just sit back anymore and go, well, it's the way it's always been, or I'm just not going to look at that. I'm not going to see that. It is time, right? It's time. It's time because the people who have been oppressed by this system don't have a choice. They've tried, and I've listened to a lot of Black voices this last week, and some talked particularly about how they tried to blend in. They tried to kind of toe the line, whether that was at work or in their neighborhood, and yet they never were accepted. They never were given full opportunities. They never were accepted, invited to the neighborhood get together. They never, as much as they tried. And then when they tried to fit in, it was dishonoring who they really are. And so this is a time in our world when, perhaps one of the things we're dismantling is the mainstream, right? Like, we have this mainstream culture with its mainstream trends, and ideas and ideology. And it's like, well, actually it's time for us to really recognize that each person should be able to dance to their own rhythm. And we should be honoring and accepting of that. And we spend a lot of time making each other wrong and trying to change someone to be exactly like us and to dance exactly like us and look exactly like us and believe exactly like us. And there's so much energy out there. It's really pretty intense about, trying to change someone through arguing and debating. And, it's like, it's time for us to stand in our own power as individuals and to honor and accept that in others. And the next card that came out was right after that was conscious connections, right? So, there's like one person here who's like looking away, like she doesn't want to look at it. She's like, look at the shiny objects. Here's these like beautiful fish and, sort of the material world. And like, I want to look at that. And this other person saying, you know what? No, not anymore. I'm going to turn, I'm going to look right in the camera. I'm going to look right at the problem. And I'm going to look right at our world, and I'm going to face whatever it is. And I understand that some people, they don't know how to do that yet. They're very uncomfortable with that. I get all of that. I'm a coach. So yeah, I work with people who are working to move from this energy here to this energy here, which is, what does it take to turn and face and look at the shadow parts of yourself, look at the shadow parts of our society, look at, and do that healing work, do that acknowledgement of that healing work. And it's time for us to make conscious connections. And so for everyone who is involved in, and everyone who cares deeply about our world, and the future of our world and the equality of all human beings and the sovereignty of each person to live their own life and express their diversity. And, this is our planet. We have to take care of it. There's so many things that we need to actually face now. And we've been sweeping all of that under the rug because, there's been a few, even actual children, like Greta Thunberg and others, who literally would say, why are we sweeping this under the rug? And then there's just so many who played that role of the questioner, right? It's a really valuable role in society. So valuable. It's a role that I've played for a long time, and it's not a popular thing to do. It's not a popular thing to do. But it's necessary. It's necessary. So what happens as, people begin to speak out, this is what protesting, this is what social media posting, this is about having conversations with your family and friends, this is about writing to your legislators about particular bills, or taking your feet or mailing in your ballot so that you vote. This is about having a say and bringing a deeper vision, a broader vision into our world and our global society. And of course, it's going to look different depending on what country you're from, but this is an invitation for us to speak out, right? This is an invitation to speak out. And one of the things I wrote about this week to my newsletter and to my community was that, yes, it makes me uncomfortable. And yes, those emotions are intense for me, especially as a sensitive person, to watch everything that's happening and to face it. And yet it is my privilege to be able to say, well, I don't want to face it. It's too much. It's too difficult. I'm just going to turn away and not look at the state of things. That's my privilege. If I choose that, that's my privilege showing. And so essentially, it's time to be vocal. Now, do we have to do this to the point of our complete exhaustion? I mean, I'm already a little bit tired, as you can probably tell. And I think everyone is in that space. So it's necessary to take downtime. It's necessary to do some things that you enjoy. It's necessary to rest and to try to get sleep. And it's necessary to feed your body healthy food. And it's necessary to walk in nature and do whatever you need to do to renew and rejuvenate. So my co-founder Terry in our meeting with our community today. She said, you know, um, rest and renew and rejuvenate and then re-engage and then go back through that cycle. So this is that cycle, right? This is that cycle. And as sensitive, empathic, intuitive people, we are well positioned to understand how to do that and what to do that. So today, for example, I took a little bit of a break from social media, just for my own mental health, just so that I could be in a space of being able to come back and maybe being a little less emotional about it and a little more rational and a little more able to help and to ask, what can be done and how can I do that, and where can I lend my voice, and kind of going within to see, what's next. It really is, my friends, a marathon, not a sprint. Overcoming systemic racism on a global level is going to take time. And it's going to mean that we're going to need to be in this for a while, for a long while, maybe the rest of our lives. And so, to really bring about equality of all human beings, that's going to take a bit, because there's a lot of old attitudes. There's a lot of old belief systems. There are a lot of those ancestor spirits, and some of those are not even ancestors. Some of them are just like incarnated right here. And they're people who have that old mentality. And so it's going to take time. And like one person, a group of people go out and they're in the battle, and they're, lending their voice, and another group of people are like kind of back and they're resting. And then it's like, okay, switch, and we need that pacing. We need that pacing. And people of color, Black people, and, Indigenous people, they need us to be in this for the long haul. So let's ask a little bit about that. This is the Earth Warriors deck. Beautiful, beautiful deck. Let's ask about being in there for the long haul, because as I see it, all of this is interrelated. So, so justice and equality and the future of our ecosystem and our planet and our economic system and how we educate our children, all of these things are interrelated, right? Everything's interrelated. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk about the interrelated aspect of this work that we're doing. Okay. So the first one that came up is the clan of the wolf heart. And this says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So, there's a song by someone in my generation, Generation X, John Mayer, that came out maybe 10 years ago or so. And it was called Waiting for the World to Change. And he was talking about how our generation got very jaded by previous generations. And we're just kind of like, okay, we're going to wait for the world to change. Like, we see that this is what's going on. We feel like kind of hopeless and helpless amongst these huge systemic issues. And so, like, how do we actually enact change? What do we actually do? And what this card is telling us is like, we're the ones, right? We have right here at basically the solar plexus chakra, the wolf, right? The wolf. This is a fierce energy, but it's backed by these rainbows, right? This is the attention to diversity, and then there's peace, there's peace. There's enormous transformation and a huge activation here at the crown chakra, right? And you see the two fishes. So we are moving out of the Piscean era. Sorry, I see it very well. We're moving out of the Piscean era, which is really about duality, polarity, which is black and white, men and women, the haves, the have-nots, all those dynamics we've been playing out for so long. It's now time to release, because what you see here is the water energy coming in, because the age of Aquarius is the water bearer, right? So this clan of the wolf heart, it's like a wolf pack. They can run for a long time, and they do. They pace themselves as they're looking, for their destination, for their prey. And this is just such a powerful energy, but it's a long-term process, right? And it takes everyone of every color, every creed, every background. You know, I was really heartened this week as I saw here in America some particularly Christian pastors who are pretty well-known, pretty famous televangelists, who actually came out and started condemning. And I had never really seen that group of people talk about it from that perspective before. I saw an image of a man who had been driving around these protesters in his truck with a Confederate flag. And then he came back the next day and he apologized to the young Black men that were there, you know, for the second day of protests. And he said he was wrong. And there was a picture of them hugging. And what I believe, my friends, is that hearts and minds are changing, right? Hearts and minds are changing. And when so many people stand up and say, no, we want a different way, we expect a different way. It's not that we just want it. We are going to create a different way. We have a clan of all different people from all over this planet that are all moving towards the same vision, right? The same vision. It is time for us to evolve as human beings. We have been in this cycle of power and control for so many thousands of years, and we're just like, we're done, you know, we're done with it. And I love this, the goddess of Teotihuacan, I can't say it, Teotihuacan. She guards the waters of life. So let's take a look at her, right? This is elderhood and the forest stability, right? The waters of life are what emerges when a woman actually physically gives birth, right? New life, the waters of life, you know, release and come out of the amniotic sac. The waters of life are the waters on our planet. The water in Flint, Michigan, which is a primarily Black community that was being contaminated by companies that were dumping their waste into that, and their residents were getting really, really sick. You know, this is a guardian energy, right? So this is a guardian energy. The water is the deep emotions, right? The deep emotions. This is her bringing all of this up to the surface, this goddess. And this is really the rise of the divine feminine. You know, we've been talking about this a lot, but we've been in that masculine energy for so long. And there's nothing wrong with masculine energy. And I'm not talking about men and women. I'm talking about the masculine energy of producing, competing, striving, innovating. So some of that can be really, really important. And we need that balance of that energy. If we don't take action in the world, nothing will ever happen, right? But this is the feminine energy. And she's coming in fiercely. Like, she is not playing around. She is not playing around. And I've seen in this movement so many Black women who are coming in this way. And they have the right to. They have the right to come in that way. It's a fierceness, right? It's a real fierceness. And it is the guarding of the waters of life. They cannot take it any longer, that they can't allow their sons and daughters to walk down the street, to ride a bike, to have their significant other jog down the street and not know if they're going to come home. So, you know, this is it's a very serious, intense warrior goddess energy, the divine feminine rising. And it's time. It's time. So that gets us about halfway through our reading. And let's just ask for what wants to emerge next. What really wants to come in? How do we move forward? How do we move forward? Thank you, Holy Ones. How do we move forward? These are two really interesting energies. So this is the fire energy, right? It probably makes sense right now that this would come up. Fire is being used as it has been throughout human history, as a signal, right? So before we had roads and internet and all these things, one group of people would set a fire on one mountain and the other would set a fire on the other mountain, and this is how they would communicate with each other. And this is taking us back. This is the root chakra. This is about, safety, security, survival. This gets us to that deep place. And when people get into that root chakra energy, as we did, this is anger, rage, it brings up some pretty fiery stuff. We've seen it. I watched an Amazon distribution center in Los Angeles. I mean, it was just burning to the ground. And I haven't gone back to see, what they determined was the cause for that. But there's a lot of discontent. There's a lot of, there's a lot of anger, a lot of rage. There's 400 years of rage here in the United States. And yet we do have the 1 and the 9 moving into a 10. So this is a completion of a cycle. And the fire can either be used to completely decimate, and sometimes, like in a forest, for example, lightning will strike, it'll illuminate the whole space. A forest fire will happen, it will clear out all the brush underneath, and then what happens is there's new growth. New growth takes a while to kick in. So fire can enact itself in that way. It can also be a gathering place for the community where everyone comes together and warms their hands. Everyone's given a nice beverage, warm beverage. Everyone gathers around in a circle. Everyone's voices are heard. Fire is action, and it is intention, and it is change. That's like the phoenix energy, right? So this is a really good energy. And then when comes next is the beloved, right? The beloved. And so many Black mothers and fathers have lost a beloved. So many throughout history. So many people of color have lost a beloved, a child, a parent, an uncle, cousin. So many stories. I can't even imagine how long it would take if someone read off every story from every person that's been impacted by racism, prejudice, violence. If we take that into a larger scale, all of the wars that we've enacted on Earth, people fighting over land or resources, it really is time to move out of this energy, to move out of that cycle and to come into a place where we are able to meet each other heart to heart, to recognize our shared humanity, to recognize every single human being on this planet as valuable, as equal. Because then, one of the things I wrote recently is what if everyone is your soulmate? What if every single human being on this planet is your soulmate? They always talk about, I'm looking for my soulmate. And that sounds lovely and it sounds wonderful. But you know what? We all decided to come here together to have this shared experience. And what experience are we going to have? We get to choose, right? We get to choose which experience we have. So there's the beloved energy. Let's go back to the sacred rebels and ask, what do we need to know about helping to move our communities into this heart-centered place? What do we need to know? So the 2 cards that came out, trust and faith. So we have trust in the process. Trust in the process. So here we are, vulnerable, This reminds me of a video I watched this week of a group of white people kneeling down before a group of Black people. And they were asking for, they were apologizing. They were asking to be a stand-in for any ancestor, any person who came before who hurt anyone that was standing there, any of their ancestors and their families. They were offering not reconciliation. They weren't looking for forgiveness. They were humbling themselves. And actually, I happened across this video because there was a person that I knew in my past who posted it and was really triggered by this, saying, no, hell no, I'm not going to kneel before anyone. I only kneel before God. And I felt in that moment it was really important for me to be calm but firm in saying, this is necessary. You know, it's necessary for us to sense in and to be able to hold that space. To be able to hold that space. Because what I'll say is, like, if someone is triggered by that, someone would not be willing to humble themselves and say, this was wrong in front of a person, whether it was something you personally did wrong, if it's something your country did wrong, if it's something your company did wrong. If we're not willing to do this, then we're part of the problem. And I'll tell you, you know, like, humbling myself in front of someone else, and I've done it multiple times in my life, it is not a comfortable thing. The ego wants to fight. The ego wants to say, well, it's not me, I didn't do it. Make justifications for our behavior, make justifications for our policies. The ego wants that, right? But when we have faith, that when we say, I'm sorry you had to endure this. I'm sorry, I stand here and I know that apology can't erase everything that happened. I know it's not going to immediately make it better, but it is a starting point. And these are the kinds of acts that we need to be able to do now in order to build trust, in order to start the healing process. And the healing process is going to take a long time. And then what it says is trust yourself, right? Trust yourself. And this is, I guess, would be my message to people who feel called to speak up and come forward and be allies and donate or volunteer or provide resources or ask, you know, how can I help you right now? Or lend their voice on their platform or whatever that is. Trust that you will do the best you know how, and doing the best you know how. And then if something comes up and someone gets upset, just, you know, just humble yourself and say, okay, thank you for letting me know. And I wasn't aware, and now I am aware, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And just trust that, you know, because when we feel like, oh no, if I say something, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be attacked, or someone's going to be upset with me, or it's going to ruin my reputation. This is when we're in that ego energy, right? So when we're in that ego energy. But when we trust, when we go into our heart, when we go into that prayerful space, that meditative space, however you do that work, I would say, you know, what is it that I'm led? How can I lend myself? How can I help build the momentum and keep the momentum going for equal human rights for all people on this planet? What can I do? And just trust, my friends, in that knowing. So let's go back to the soul cards and say, when we have faith in this process, when we are able to humble ourselves and we're learning, coming back into beginner's mind, what do we need to know about that? What do we need to know? Right, and the images that came out was this which again is really being heart-centered and having this activation, right? When we're closed-minded, when we don't want to see a person as equal, when we don't want to see our own behavior, when we don't want to see our own participation in a racist society, everything's closed off. But as we begin to open, as we humble ourselves, as we invite our ego to stand down, then we have this activation. Then we can actually be in service, right? Then we can actually be in service. We can actually, we're not here to save anyone. And we need to be standing with Black leaders that are people of color, listening to what it is that they need, asking questions, getting clear that this is the activation that's happening. It's a higher consciousness. We are moving from this old age of war and power and control into an age and an era of consciousness. This is the new frontier. I know space is the frontier, and Elon Musk is kind of leading that charge, regardless of what you think about him or not. But I was really excited about the space shuttle launch and connection with the International Space Station, because my biggest bucket list is to go to outer space. So, but that's a little sidebar. I just really, there's so much inside here, so much capacity, so much depth that we just haven't even plumbed yet. We haven't even plumbed that yet. And the next card that comes is that by doing that work, we walk through a new door, over a new threshold, right? We have all this golden light energy, the beautiful healing, the protection, the divine spark within us. And then the purple, which is the wisdom and the peace, right? The wisdom and the peace. So let's ask the Earth Warriors to finish this reading out. And say, after we move through this threshold, we've gone through the stage of acknowledging all of the ancestry, all of the history, all of the trauma that's been enacted upon people. We come into the child energy where we start to question, why is it like this? It shouldn't be like this. We begin to dance to our own drama, and we don't need to conform. We can actually speak out. And we turn and we make this connection, and we face what's happening. And we move that fire energy into something that's momentum building rather than everything being burned down. Sometimes the fire brings in, it needs to be sort of harsh. It needs to be sort of a statement, right? And not everyone will agree with me with that. But it definitely got people's attention. And I'm not an advocate necessarily for violence. But it did get the attention. But now it's time. There's a shifting of this energy. And now we need to build that fire. We need to keep it kindled and going. And we come into this heart connection with my beloved when we start to see every human being as our brother and sister. And we have faith that we're going to know how to do this. I have faith that this time is the most powerful time ever on our planet. That's the faith that I hold, right? And as I continue to hold that faith, I continue to get this activation. I continue to listen. I continue to speak out, right? I continue to speak out. I continue to take care of myself and do what I need to do. We understand that we are the ones we've been waiting for. There is no more waiting. This is why we came here. We came here right now. And we have this fierce goddess energy, right? Who guards the waters of life. So let's close this out and see, really what's next in the cycle. What is it that we need to know? If there's one message or two messages that could come through here for us. What do we need to know at this time? Ooh, lots of cards want to move and shift. Okay, now we've got a couple of them. Okay, so we had 3. So the medicine horse tells us that we are making progress on the path, right? We're making progress. So, I'm getting on the horse. I'm riding as far as I can. I'm a messenger. I'm going to shout this message out to every village that I stop in. And then every once in a while, I need to stop and make camp and sit by the light of the campfire. I need to rest. I need to allow my horse to rest, right? And we go through these cycles over and over. And there's progress being made. And the next one is Mamakila, the mandala of the moon, right? Again, this is cycles, rising of the divine feminine, all of this activation, sacred codes, sacred fierceness, coming back out again. There is a fierceness that is contained within each of us. So even if you see yourself as a light worker, as a mystic, we think, oh, I can only be in this beautiful, loving, kind, high vibrational energy. Obviously, that is our intention, right? However, there are times when we need to be fierce, right? There are times when we need to be fierce. We need to ride. We need to spread the word. We need to talk about what's happening. We need to bring that feminine energy, that fierce feminine energy. Women are they are this like such strong beings on this planet. I have never given birth, but my goodness, that is the time when a human being comes closest to death, right? When we are birthing something new. And so it is going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be painful in some cases. And you know what? We can endure. We can endure collectively and we can endure individually. And we must endure because what we are pregnant with is the new era, right? It's this new era of equality and empowerment. And the final thing that came out was the beautiful place, right? The 2 and the 6 is an 8, which brings us into balance, right? So in the background, we have volcanoes going off and the rolling waters, but in the front, there's strength, there's nurturing, there's transformation at the heart level. This is what we're meant for. And hey, who doesn't like a unicorn? Because, it's the unicorn energy, right? Unicorn is often seen, and I loved unicorns when I was a kid. Unicorn is often seen as, this mythical creature, this unobtainable beauty, this unobtainable spiritual quality. But I think this card tells us that that's what we can create. We can either create heaven on earth or we can create hell on earth. And we have a choice, right? We have a choice by our actions, by our words, by how we hold our presence and our space on this planet at this time. So I encourage you, my friends, to firmly, kindly, gently speak up. Support those around you. Listen to your heart. Listen to how you feel called. Use your specific gifts to move our world forward and help birth this new era, this new Aquarian era, into the age of consciousness. Every piece of work that you do on a personal level resonates out into the collective and vice versa. And you are strong enough, and you are gifted enough, and you are ready. You are the one that we've been waiting for, and so am I. Thank you so much for tuning into this collective energy reading. I hope it was helpful for you. And I will see you very soon. Any information that you'd like to get about my personal work or the community that I run is in the description box below. And I will see you very soon. Namaste, my friends.